Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hello. It's so good to see so many of you here in person, and I know there's lots of people tuning in online. I'm Caitlin McGurk. I'm the Associate Curator and Associate Professor here at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. CXC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our annual festival is free and open to the public and relies on corporate and grant support, as well as individual donations. We are so grateful for the support. Visit the Support CXC link on our website to find out how you can help us create meaningful connections between the people who make comics and those who read them. Cartoon Crossroads Columbus acknowledges the ancient ancestors of the Eastern Woodlands tribes, now referred to as the Adena and Hopewell cultures, inhabited the land we now know as Ohio. Their descendants include the living nations of the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandotte, Delaware, and Seneca Cayuga. We honor and respect the diverse Indigenous peoples connected to this place where we gather. We hope you enjoy this event. Don't forget to visit our virtual expo at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org and keep the conversation going in our Discord channel, which you can find at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org/Discord. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rachel Miller to lead this panel.
Thanks, Caitlin. Sometimes I forget that I'm Dr. Rachel Miller now, but okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Superspreader panel. Can everyone hear me okay-ish? Talk louder, Rebecca, you're saying? Okay, cool. I'll try and talk louder. I'm really excited to be here with the team behind Superspreader. And I just want to kind of kick things off by letting you guys introduce yourselves. So does anyone want to start first, or should we just go down?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jeff.
Cool. My name is Jeff Sims. I'm an independent artist and curator.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Wright. I'm an English professor at Columbus State Community College.
Hello, everyone. I'm Campbell. I'm a comic artist who is also teaching in the comics program at Columbus College of Art and Design.
Hello, my name is Stephen Curry. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Just hold it a little bit out. We'll get some feedback.
Steven. My name is Stephen Curry, and I'm your friend. I'm a writer, and I'm an occultist.
I'm Taylor Chiu. I do illustration, comics, collage, video work, all kinds of stuff.
My name is Sara Guzman. I'm a visitor experience security supervisor at the Columbus Museum of Art by day, and I make comics by night.
Awesome. Well, welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we have introduced the most important part of the panel, which is Superspreader magazine, which you all have helped curate and put together. So I guess I wanted to start off by asking kind of about the origins of Superspreader. When I first heard about it, it was Steven DM'd me and said, hey, would you like to write anything that you're really passionate about? Like that dream project that you've always wanted to do. And that's kind of course I didn't at the time because I'm very busy, but that was kind of the first time that I heard about Superspreader. So yeah, I was wondering if you guys could kind of fill me in on the vision for this project, your intentions for it, and its origins.
I can't remember. Is this sounding good? It's so hard to tell.
You guys should just use the table once.
I was thinking.
Okay. And all right, cool. So the first time, at some point, me and Steven were hanging out, just walking. I can't remember somewhere, just walking around Columbus. And
I remember specifically it was my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got out of class.
Yeah, and we were just talking about working on projects and not having necessarily a space for that project to land. And I know for me, working on comics, there's always this number to reach. There's this page count. You're like, to make it a book, you have to have at least 10 pages. To make it a book, you have to have at least a thing, or be a part of someone else's project or an anthology. Steven has, a very eclectic practice, and we all know a lot of different artists. And the first people that we kind of reached out to about possibly doing something and finding a home for the kind of random works that we were making during the pandemic and during that isolation. And so we just kind of touched base with some close friends, and it was very much just a nugget of an idea. And then they reached in their Rolodexes and really made it count. So
As the association lines of a certain catastrophe with the virus and a certain reality con where people are dishonest with themselves. So it's easy for a certain reversal to appear, but it's difficult for artists to lie to themselves because, well, artists teach others how to see, which is exactly what artists do. Now I can see that, and I'm sensitive, and artists are also sensitive, but I am sensitive to the reality gimmick. Now I think about often T.S. Eliot with some notes towards a redefinition of culture post-World War II in the German audience of how there's a certain increasing aspect where you don't want culture to be defined by economics or politics for the obvious association and illusion there. Or George Steiner, some notes towards a redefinition of culture. This certain stranglehold of a certain psyche aspect where the individual is trapped within. And with the isolation, because of the pandemic, I see this as like a mental health crisis and artists being the most sensitive. I could see the same. I'm from a still town, from Lorain, Ohio. It's West Cleveland. Certain reproduction of manufacturing, repetition of falsehoods. And it's the same. Avengers 3, everything is doubling up. It's a new Ghostbusters, but it's the same stuff. You change it on the surface. It's a very superficial level. But I only care about the artist and express, and I care about individuation with some like Carl Jungian perspective. And I can easily talk to the artists. This project's predicated on that. It was checking in on friends, people that we care about each other, looking after for each other, and how they can interpret, because it helps me, and with those connections and bonds, and it just travels that way. It's communication, internally, inner space, externalized in artifact form that contains a certain expression of value that can be read and experienced by others. And this is where we are, and this is who we are. Sims and I worked at the museum. I've been in the museum for 13 years. They offer a buyout museum-wide. What to do? Work third shift, put myself in a position where Sara can work and replace me first shift, security. Taylor worked there as well. Associations are clear. Mike Wright, we go back, way back. This is family I'm talking about. This is not a gimmick. This is not work. This is, well, expression within an eternal is love. I mean, look at the stage, it's set up, it should be Christ-like. There's a certain association here, but I love my friends and I love their well-being.
And
We
also,
reached out with 21 and we pulled, and everyone said, yeah, let me do something. Let me do something for fun.
yeah, we each kind of had different connections, both inside Columbus and outside of Columbus, and really kind of reached down into our Rolodexes, looked up emails, and this kind of gave us an opportunity to check on people that we've known, see what they were making, and kind of have a conversation surrounding that practice. And if you check out the interiors of this book, you'll realize that it's has video art, it has poetry, it has comics, and it kind of explores the gamut. And the unifying element is that this is kind of what a byproduct of that isolation and that amassing free time of being an artist.
Yeah, that was kind of like when Steven reached out to me. I remember, Steven, you were like,
And Brian Moss.
yeah.
He's here in the room. Hey, I love you, Brian.
Yeah, I remember you said, like, if you are contributing to this, it just has to be anything that you're passionate about. Like that project that it seemed like you were all trying to kind of create a space where artists could come together and put out work that they'd wanted to do, but maybe had stopped themselves from doing at some point.
Yeah, the people like to reveal themselves, but it's there in the work always anyway.
And this kind of helped me finish projects that I had that sometimes you just go halfway through something and you're like, I don't know where this is going. And you just kind of shrug and it's just, and you have those loose pieces of paper in your apartment or your studio or your living space, and you don't know where those pieces of paper go. And, it was like, hey, we have a magazine. So what are you going to do with those loose pieces of papers? And you just kind of wrap things up, make them pretty, and then print, and kind of the pressure was alleviated. Like the first 3 pages of what I was doing already existed. And then it was because of this magazine that I completed that until like a 5 or 6 page. I don't even have a page count. Isn't that crazy? You have no idea how crazy it is to be a comic artist. You can't remember your page count. I remember the page counts of all my things. It's 8. There you go. Taylor got me.
So, and you guys have already touched on this, but this magazine doesn't just include comics, right? It has poetry, QR codes that we can scan and access video art. What's that? Photography, collage. So why did it feel important to kind of integrate all those different mediums?
I'll
and
pass that
formats?
to Mike because Mike knows. You mind, Mike?
No. So
He's the poet here.
something I really like about Staben, anytime I'm with him, is that I would never say, "Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a poet." Staben always does that for me. So, yeah, very caring gesture. So in pulling work, rather than worrying about maybe a more typical editorial or commission process, say you're putting together a literary magazine or something of the kind where it might be themed, we just ask people for what they've been working on without explicit concern to it being thematically coherent. I think that did make the magazine into something that was more representative generally of the time period and maybe of a kind of range or scope of people's reactions to what was going on. Some of the pieces deal directly with the idea of isolation, quarantine, the topical news. Others are simply what people found to do in those small moments where their ordinary lives were interrupted. And I think that makes for an interesting batch of work. And it was also, I think, a different experience for people, whether they're new to publishing or new to getting solicited for work, or whether they're very practiced at it, where it was, you show us what you like and what you've done. We're not going to be curatorial in the sense that we're going to judge or select work here. There's not a slush pile. It's what you want best, what you want to show us most. That's what we're going to put in. That's the standard or the metric. And I think we got some really interesting stuff as a result, where, otherwise there can be some real pressures about being asked to submit work, whether or not it'll go in, whether or not it fits with the other stuff. So I think it was good in that way in particular, maybe.
Yeah, I think that especially the act of having specific folk that we could call friends and a form of community. Because I feel like that was really important, because in a lot of anthologies, you have this kind of submission process and you have this filtering process.
Funny word, right? Submission.
Yeah, and so just the idea of being able to just trust a group of people to just kind of be themselves in a space is just nice. It's nice. It's a nice feeling.
Something that it's a thought that I've got about Superspreader that all three of y'all kind of touched on a little bit, that I really like, is like, so it's cool if there's a reason for an artist to complete something, complete a project, but I'm particularly interested in artists who are compelled to create, like creators who are just compelled to create, writers who are compelled to write, and the conditions can be this, that, whatever, but they're still making things. And that's one of the things that I really liked about Superspreader is the majority of it is things that had been made by creators who can't stop creating.
Yeah.
And then you put that together, and it feels different from the kind of like submission process that y'all were talking about.
Yeah. There's this sense of it's a strange magazine because it's a sense of going through someone's studio and finding the work that they've been working on that they don't plan on showing, or at the same time, it's like walking through a gallery or flipping through the channels of a television. There's this venue that also has this kind of surprising randomness, but it's unified in like your engagement.
It's also organic source material, individuals. It's not just a television or a magazine one flips through. When I'm a collage artist, so I cut them up, but I view Loser of Reality the same way. It's like pieces of conversation, expressions, mood. So it's like, to answer your question, Rachel, specifically about my sensitivity towards a certain conformist microcosm of just all eating from the same trough with the same references. I don't want to hear about movies, for example. We all know that. It's a certain academic cliche, it's a platitude. Politics, economics right now, we walk by it, I can be sensitive with depth, I can treat it, and I probably even would have evidence to suggest that I care more. But when I see in the pages of other people's work, I'm not gonna mention any names, it's so surface that I would imagine that they know nothing about the subject or they care so little besides going to earn some money. And I don't like it. So I'm motivated by contempt because it's a certain falsehood. And when I work with other artists, talk to the public like kindergarten. It's a public or private, no difference. Artists, they talk amongst themselves. It's a big difference. I only care about the artists.
I know that when I was asked to be a part of Superspreader, I had been mostly working on a comic that will be debuting after this panel. And I was like, I do comics all the
Sweet ass
time.
Willie.
Sweet ass Willie,
That's
Jungle Bird Rumble. It's project with Nevyets right here. High five, man. No, over here. So I do comics all the time. I'm like, I love comics, but I'm like, what can I do that I've been doing during COVID that isn't a comic? And I've been putting all my time and effort into this thing. There's so much detail in it. And I'm like, I need to step back, do something different. And so I realized like, hey, I've been sending Staven my dreams for a long time, even during COVID. And usually it's to like dive through the symbolism, what's been happening in my life that goes into these dreams and what can we pull out of them into my work. And then sometimes it was just to have a log of the dreams that I can go back and find. And I haven't done anything really with them, but then I kind of pull a little bit for the comics, but I'm like, let's see what I can do with these emails. So then I pulled back from just throwing a ton of stuff into it. I took an email and I'm like, let's reinterpret this into an illustration and see what that looks like. And I was scared to do that because I like to shove a lot of stuff into my comics. They're just full of powwow, gore, everything. And I really liked how it turned out. And I probably wouldn't have done that if they didn't say, hey, what have you been doing during COVID? And what do you want to put in Superspreader? And where I had to be like, let's not do a comic, let's do something else. So I really appreciate that they asked me to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, Sims is pretty adamant about one of the, I guess, arbitrary parameters here, but hey, it has to be done, something that was already done, not for this, but something that you already have. And I like that. It's a nice like limitation. I don't think this is rotating. Is this playing? We have a slideshow.
Yeah, you can click through. Oh, can I?
Yeah, this will play.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because I'm going to talk about Zach Starkey. He's in New York. He's from the city, from the west side. His work's in here. I'll talk about it later. You see that, Mossy? Yeah. I'm going to hold him down. We talk about trauma here, right? We're talking about artists. Right. He has trauma from the city. But his he was in New York. He was a photographer, musician. Did quite well. Got laughed out of town. Goes to New York. Friends with Bernard Sumner personally. Opens up for New Order in Berlin. He's doing all right. You know, we talk about conformity here. We talk about expression. We talk about artistry. We talk about communication. Starkey's in this, and I just want to talk about my friend. Photography that he was walking around at night, 3, 4 a.m. of like drug transactions on the streets, poverty, homelessness, increasing in New York City. So this is the actual document. You know, we're all sensitive here. This movie kind of fast, it's kind of funny. That's Starkey's images right there, yeah. So Zach Starkey, you see that? I'll call you later, buddy. Dead end. It's in New York City, it's in, capitalism. We've got 3 capitals integrated. Intellectual property, San Francisco, DC for power or money, where he's New York, and that's a drug transaction there that he caught. He walks at night, I walk at night as well. We share that in common.
Well, and I think unifying, I think that this magazine overall tries to unify an experience, and going through it, you kind of begin to draw your own connections between these artists and the people involved. And even the way that they were laid out is very intentional. Even though this is a great presentation, being actively able to look at images next to each other and draw relationships between those images
Exposition
is a part of the experience of flipping through a magazine. And it was very intentionally done by both Mike and Taylor as they kind of went through it in InDesign. but having direct experiences and a one-to-one, especially with like video art in relation to engaging with the page, and some art on the pages requiring for you to pull your phone out and examine the page. Having your phone and the actual magazine out at the same time, it forces you to just create new connections and new understandings of ways to engage with the media. Even thinking about the transition from paper printing to digital spaces and trying to reconcile some of those conversations are something that we kind of explored, not so much directly to my intentions or my efforts, but especially in the page layouts and the editing.
Well, this is beautiful. Like this, and that's the thing about the museum. When I've mentioned with Sims and the pandemic, you know, the artists are having a hard time. Obviously, got bodies looking at, you know, vessels of information, artifacts, what have you, and you can't have that. So it's difficult. You don't have the population. You can't circulate. Makes like the economy. We no longer work there. He's a contractor. He has this legacy, 20 years, 13 years. But this is our private lives. So we have a community. We have an understanding of it. Will you disagree with that? So it's like to continue the building and associations of like, well, I met Mossy at the museum. It's like, this goes a long time. We work to each other. First collaboration was like 2010, you know, Sims and Mossy, and the continuation of that. Like this is expression of life. It's cultural. It's a real application of the self. But to redefine and reposition and manifest in reality what you're interested in, what you want, not to be boxed in and controlled. No, good luck with that. Or submission. Like we didn't even have submissions for this. We just reached out with friends. Hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to show something? Yes or no? What's there is what they want to show.
Well, I mean, something that I think, especially since we're here at CXC and engaging with an audience, I feel like a lot of the audience are folks who were in well, we all experienced this event and we were all making things. And I think that if anything, my hopes for this book is that when folks either check it out, read it, buy it, whatever you do with this book, being able to understand that in a short period of time, there were a group of friends who just decided that they want to put a book together, and not everyone was going for a specific count, but they came together and with different skill sets, because I'm not necessarily an expert on InDesign. I'm not necessarily, Taylor's the expert on InDesign. I'm not necessarily as eclectic in my presentation of this work, but I have friends and I had a desire, and we're able to come together as a community and make a physical object. And we were able to talk about who the printers were. We were able to talk about how to deal with distribution. We talked about how to manage the money that was going toward it. And we talked about just the details of why we were doing it and how we were going to approach those challenges.
Yeah, it's like an institution itself. There's two professors here, you know, Craig and Mike, and the curator, or Sims. You didn't want to use that title though, for good reason. But still, like, no, this is easy. Everyone has these skills.
And this is
for ourselves.
This is completely accessible to every one of you. If you wanted to make something right now, it would be a phone call away and a couple of bucks for printing. And the degree of labor you want to do on the printing and the binding and all that stuff, that all comes down to you. But there are certainly methods that you can, there's certainly approaches that you have to creating something that you want to create, even if you feel like you don't have the time to do it, and you don't have enough work, and you maybe feel like there's a process of being alone, which is actually an interesting thing.
I would like to restate that a little more aggressively.
Yeah,
there's no excuse anymore. There's no excuse for not making a book. If you've got a book, it's like if you have the idea, it's so cheap, it's so easy to make it a reality. That I hope more people realize that and just start cooking.
What makes it special is that it's my friends, and that's why this book is special. But like you can make something that's special to you too, and your friends, and it could really look nice and have like a binding and stuff. It'd be cool.
I was wondering, and this is, I guess, for Mike and Taylor, because we've kind of talked about how you both collaborated to lay out the issue, and something that might help people who are like, oh, I do want to make a book now. what was that process like of like, as you were getting submissions, you know, how was the team kind of handling that? And then how are you guys working together to kind of lay out this book?
Okay. So basically, once we got everything in, I just printed out everything at like FedEx, like, you know, single Xerox page. And we literally just laid everything out like in a line on the floor. And we had such like a diverse range of materials. It was kind of easy to like place things in like a pacing that felt nice. Like I knew with, if you like cycle through with Jeff's hands, he had like, I don't know, you had like 15 or 20 of those. Those ones aren't in the book, but I just wanted to include some more in the slide.
The
I
cell
picked
phone
that-
designs.
Yeah, that one looks like me, so I picked that one. But I wanted to use them because there's, I don't know, they just like had like a nice, I don't know, there's like a nice like space to them. So I wanted to use them kind of like as like bookends or like chapter titles. So those ones are like spread out pretty evenly throughout the book, kind of like where it, you know, it felt like, you know, this theme's ending or whatever. And then whereas like with Craig's piece, you know, it's one single comment, so those like pages needed to go together. So like if we made piles, like this is what needs to like be grouped together. These ones can be, these people's submission can be like dispersed throughout the book. And so, I mean, we did it like pretty quick. It came together really nicely.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first concerns I have when I'm writing something or trying to put together something is the idea of a through line, right? A cohesiveness. And I kind of retaught every time I sit down to write something that that executive function, so to speak, isn't one that you can really control in the beginning. You have work, and then you start to move it around, and it reveals itself. It reveals maybe it's thematic, maybe it's imagistic, but there is a series of connections. There's that dark matter in between the bits, right? That sort of makes it gel. And setting up the pages the way Taylor was talking about, we just started to see these interesting synergies. And I think if we'd have talked about it a lot in the beginning and then sort of set on it, like, well, we should intersperse these elements and we should make sure it isn't too image heavy in the front or too image heavy in the back. That would have been a constraint that maybe, I don't know, altered the order in a way to where it wasn't maybe as aesthetically interesting or as engaging in the end. It was a really fun process to sort of curate and order it with the understanding that it would kind of show itself because we had such a large group of submissions and so many interesting things to choose from.
Reagan's in the house. Hello.
I think what Taylor and Mike were able to achieve in this, their ability to structure this magazine in a way that felt as cohesive as it did, especially considering kind of the random approach of acquiring work. I mean, once it came down to me working on my own projects, I found myself often referring to them and going to Taylor, I'd be like, hey, Taylor, how do I do this? And I'd be like, I would try to lay things out on InDesign and just go find Taylor. Because there was like, in terms of, oh, this back matter, how do I incorporate this? What should the count be? What about, how do I do this? How do I adjust this? There was an aesthetic and an eye for pacing and rhythm that I was really, really present.
It's also cut up. I mean, Taylor and I, we call ourselves Third Mind Comics for a reason. It's predicated on Brian Geisen and Winnie Burroughs. It's my first time at Billy Ireland. I remember this when it was Sullivan Hall. Moved down here in 2001. But we study Burroughs material at the Rare Research Library. You know, because of 23, we just walk down there, make appointments, permission from the estate, Wiley Estate in England. I'm doing research. It's a cut up. Up here, you know, aspects are random, but it's not a coincidence. Unless you want to accept that. I'll tell you what it is. The cut up. It's a discipline, it's an application. And it was applied to this book. It's in the name, virus, superspreader, SS. There's a certain association of a certain like subtext. Maybe like association of Weimar Republic, whatnot. I know what time it is. There's a lot of energies out there. People just need to actually start pretending, you know. Otherwise, like, we can't get past this psychopathology. This is something other than. It's weird. Read the newspaper. What are you gonna do about that? Have breakfast, go to work, at home, pay the rent, mortgage. Oh, we need to communicate with each other. I don't want any like scaffolding. I want to address it. I want you guys to address yourselves. Beauty in that. This is an artifact. This is not a comic. Artifact expression. That's continuing because Mike's doing his poetry. Like we could, talk to Mike and his experience here in the city. It's not just that he loved that Milo whatnot, but poetry. He's a poet. But I wanted Craig to meet Mike. You mentioned earlier how this came about. We were talking in particular, but they have something in common, especially with the community. It was like, oh man, so you got to meet Mike.
Yeah, I remember
for
that.
reasons though.
I'm kind of curious, like listening to this is a space of connection that you created. It's a space of inspiration. But I'm wondering, was there anyone who submitted work who didn't end up in the magazine? I guess I don't know that.
No.
Okay, so everyone who submitted is in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was more of an invitation to a party. And so if anyone didn't show up, that was.
You weren't like
That was
bouncing.
out of my control.
You weren't bouncing people at the door like, no, this isn't good enough for us.
No one stopped at the door, and be like, no, you can't get in.
Yeah.
It was everybody was invited.
Another thing about that, because we just pulled back how much, like if we wanted to make room, it's like, well, just show less or someone else would show less, but we all had a lot of stuff. That was already finished. We were just doing a lot of work.
What
So
happens
we were able to accommodate, we wanted to accommodate.
What happens when you do the next issue of Superspreader and you have like 100 submissions?
It's not gonna happen. They're gonna have their own project. They're gonna have their own scenes and stuff.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
They do anyway.
No, I think that I hope that I see more folks make books.
Mhm.
And when it comes to events like this, when it comes to tabling, I would love to have just people not necessarily saying, I need to make this thing. I need to make an anthology that's specifically about, Dresden. And we need to get 25 artists to write those comics. Getting just a group of people to create something.
Yeah.
And not necessarily try to control the entire process.
So surrender.
Yeah.
No control.
And then have it be conversational, have it be a party, have it be just community engagement. I think that I want to see more of those. I want to see a lot more risky things that I don't like, but I buy anyways.
Yeah,
I kind of think
yeah.
it's fun.
I don't know about you, but I have a
I'm
lot
for
of
that.
private conversation.
100%. Like that's absolutely what I hope comes out of things like CXC, for sure. And again, like, maybe I approach things in a aggressive or kind of like confrontational way. I would love it if somebody came at Superspreader. Like
You.
You want to
it's making me.
Battle magazine? Like,
No, he does. Like, he's been talking about it.
does anybody want to battle?
engage us in a knife fight? I can't.
I mean, I call it Sim's race war.
Sorry.
We call each other's names.
So Craig and Sarah, like I know you guys have kind of spoken on this already, but I'm just interested in how putting this together has impacted all of your art processes. Like Craig, I remember I showed up to the Superspreader party and I was like, oh, Craig has a whole comic book now that he just printed, and Sarah, you spoke about, your comic is debuting here after the panel. So yeah, I guess I'm interested in how has it shifted your arts practice? Has it, transformed you in some way?
I know definitely David and I have talked a lot because we collaborate on our comics a lot about pulling back and making the work less hard on yourself. Just because I spend so much time, I put so much pressure to get one issue done, it starts to like become a longer and longer thing. And I just want to pull back and be able to have more work to show everybody without losing all the panache I put in it. So it's just figuring out those ways that I can really just make things a little more sparse, but still have all that energy and attitude I like to put in my comics. So definitely Superspreader helped with that aspect of my work, and it will help me in the long run be a lot calmer about getting stuff out and having a lot of more work to give to everybody else. So definitely that.
Yeah, I think, thank you. With my practice, I've historically published online, and I think that this process, especially because I enjoyed like a lot of the editing processes and the like watching Mike and Taylor work was such a highlight for me because that was the part that I was always certain I would hate. Like in terms of making like the physical object, I was all about
InDesign.
yeah. I just didn't want to use InDesign. I didn't want to put books together. I liked drawing, I liked writing, and I wanted to just give all of these files to someone to do something with it. And so being able to actively be a part of this larger practice, and it took a little bit of the pressure of having anything super polished because it looks lovely. The magazine came out lovely, and it also wasn't something that we poured 15 years into. Like I always think about things in those terms in long form creating. It's like, oh, I have this book. I'm gonna work on it for 7 years.
Forget about it. We're going with entropy,
And so-
immediacy, samurai strikes.
Yeah.
You gotta move.
And so the act of either, I always think about things either publishing online or making a 10-year project. With this, it was that was broken. That spell, that illusion was broken. And making things is just cool. You know, I like making things now.
It was like, what, like 5-6 months start to finish? I think?
Yeah, it was like,
Concept.
yeah.
Yeah, concept.
And that's wrangling 21 people. Which is a feat. That's
Artists,
yeah. And so
X amount of art.
yeah, 21 artists, which is harder than 21 regular people. And so I think that there's a glimmering sense of hope behind the art practice and a little less pressure.
Mike and I were
into
talking
making
about
a thing.
venues because of the pandemic, like the space to have it. I think about like Cara Bar and Parsons Avenue. You know, if you're a musician, you want to write your own songs, where do you play it? You go to Cara Bar. You go to other places, you DJ, there's a lot of things to do, cover songs, talk about original music, expression. These places are going away, you know? But Mike and I were talking about, once the project was finished, like, hey, remember that conversation I had about venues? It was his home. We turned his house to a venue. Yeah, in the Alive article, the address was his home, you know?
All right.
Have people showing up.
Yeah, we're getting attendees. So, I've been hosting for a long time. I'm a little worse for the wear.
That goes back to your Milo days.
You guys got a lot of fresh flowers in the house.
How long have you been hosting poetry readings around town, though? You should talk about that, honestly.
5, 6 years.
Yeah. Like Dr. John Bennett's in the book. It's not a small thing to publish someone like. I don't know how well read everybody is, but that's not my point. Point is, it's Dr. John Bennett. You know, so it's like, hello. The book says hello. You get to meet other artists, you can work with each other. Works fine with me. I got text message about people coming in town. Hey, you in town? I gotta go to my dad's wedding. I'd love to be there. Next time, you know, go to Pittsburgh, have a good time. You just create realities. It's a simple thing, really. It's what we're doing here right now. It's fun. It's so fun.
So I do want to like have some time for audience questions, but I guess my last question is what's the future of this project? And what are you all working on now? Biggest question for last.
Want to go with that sense?
This project, I think unless someone disagrees with me, I think we're on to the next one. Like it's going to be Superspreaders 2 electric movie. But we're getting like it's gonna something's gonna keep going because it's fun.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Mike, what do you think?
I want to get Rob Woods involved from Philadelphia.
Oh, hell yeah. That would be great.
Hey, Rob, I'll call you later, buddy.
For sure.
Yeah, we'll have it seems like we're going to try to compile more work and take a new approach. Something about the completion of this project that I liked a lot was putting some sunshine on artists and writers who I very much appreciate and who, for whatever reason it is, don't have as many opportunities to get the work out there. Whether, you know, it's because they have a ton of responsibility otherwise, or they're just trying to get the rent paid, whatever it is. And they're just lovely, intelligent people that are so creative and have so much to tell you. And to be able to give them these moments and say, look, it's up to you what you want to show to us. The expectation here is simply that you're happy with it, and we want other people to understand what you do. I think we'll be doing something again. I mean, probably in the middle of next year, early next year, we can start pulling stuff together. We're certainly talking about it. We'd like to do it. Yeah, and otherwise, I think been trying to collect poetry to make just like a short anthology with a few images to break it up. And
What's the name of it?
Ghost Hope. Yeah, so we're trying to do that, thinking about that, and many of the people that are here have been good sources of advice. And people who have taken inspiration from it. I know everybody else has things they've been working on and have already completed in the meantime or working toward too.
Yeah, I think at this point, after this, I printed out the first issue of that Old English. And so I'm going to continue making those. I have another title that I'm trying to get out soon and called Children in Heath. As well as continuing to do more editorial work and engaging with whatever format this kind of, whatever this continues to be, that community engagement and kind of creating platforms for the artists seems like a really great approach to getting involved in art spaces, especially specifically involved in printing, which seems to be kind of my focus at this point.
Well, ladies,
You're not gonna-
I'm always working on stuff. I work with everyone here.
So for the rest of the year, I just finished Junglebird Rumble, which is debuting today after the panel.
Our book.
Our book. But since I just finished like a longer comic I was working on, now I'm going to do experimental zines for the rest of the year and change up some formatting things I've been doing, experiment with poetry and interviews and aspects of other people's lives and my life. And then at the beginning of the year, I'm going to hit it hard and start up with those comics again and really get out some more ideas that we've been working on and I've been working on myself. Graveyard Dawns, Borderland 2, maybe a Borderland prequel, we'll see. I'm ambitious, but who knows? And we just sold out of our Jesus Christ Revenge Western, Blood of the Lamb, so there's going to be a second reprinting of that
I
soon.
didn't die for your sins, you did.
Yep, I didn't die for your sins, you did. Oh, yeah.
It's a bottle shop. I'm already sold out and wholesale there.
Yeah, so
Bottle shop
if
has the last copies.
if people are looking for that, at Bottle Shop, Anyone Comics in Brooklyn, and
good
Quimby's
price
in
out there.
Chicago. So be on the lookout, everybody.
Dirty dungarees.
Yep.
So you have to tell them what the zine that you're working on, because you told me a little bit.
Oh,
about it.
okay. So I'm working with someone on a zine about weed and their life and just sort of how it's impacted them growing up and where they are now and all the different items they've used to consume weed, whether it is bubblers, bowls, pipes, bongs. And it's just a retrospective with all the names and the fun times and the deaths of these items. So it should be an interesting one, almost to the drawing phase of that. So be on the lookout. It's called Life Short Smoke Up.
Taylor and I are working on Kid Militant right now. I got a diseased child who's a militant nihilist. I'm really amused with his partner, Cicada, with all these cut marks on her arms and legs. But I just want to get breakfast. That's the premise. But we're playing around with panels and layouts. We're doing panels last. Got a comic book with the panels is the last thing you put on. I'm really amused by that. I'm looking forward to it. It looks great. Work on first page. But that's what we're constructing like right now. And also Sims and O'Kel. I've been talking to O'Kel. You've been really with him recently?
He's here.
Yo, I didn't see you, man. Yeah, what's up, O'Kel? But O'Kel and Sims wanted to curate my first show at O'Kel, where's it at?
Skylab.
At Skylab. So that's like next year, what have you. But I just like to have fun, work on stuff, trace one's consciousness, and apply it. And rinse, repeat. It's fun.
Yeah, I just finished a collection of short comics based on like cut-up writings I had done in the past. So just going through that text and whatever came to mind, making comics out of those. And then we're working on the Kid Militant project. So that's
Kid Militant.
what I'll be doing. And then I just do like random stuff on the side anyway. So
Taylor, for that scene, because I bought that scene from you, are
great.
all the covers watercolored?
yeah, they're all hand watercolored.
And do you have will you have copies
Yeah,
of it?
I will.
now? It's a great scene. You guys should check it
Thanks.
out. So I'm gonna hand things over to Caitlin to kind of like MC the Q&A because I have to run to the next thing. But I'm gonna open up the floor to the audience, let you guys ask Team Superspreader some questions, and I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a round of applause. We've got 5 minutes for questions. If you all are watching virtually out there, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll relay them to the artists. Or if you want to ask a question here in person, just raise your hand and I'll pass you the mic. Any questions? Anything you guys want to add while people are thinking?
I already said a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I think generally it's just, it's a notion of going out and kind of being able to make things with the liberties in which you want to make them. And don't worry about keeping it super tight, just having fun in the process of making. I think it's the moral of my story.
Also gonna keep. I gotta interject. No, that's fair.
Mossy Mom.
Hey guys, how's it going, everyone? I'm calling out of the corner. I was curious of the actual time that it took, meaning from getting the stuff, submitting to getting it in hand. Because I think a lot of people don't realize how fast that can actually happen when you're a smaller publisher versus a larger publisher. They have to project out a couple of years, right? So what are the advantages? What's the time frame and the advantages and even the cost? What does that look like?
We can answer all of that.
I want to open it up by just kind of highlighting my skepticism because I brought up that conversation.
Yeah.
The first conversation I had, and Steven's like, "Yeah, let's make a magazine." I'm like, "Cool," and then I was just like, "That's some things artists say things sometimes." It's just like, "Yeah, we should make a balloon that's the size of an apartment." I'm like, "Okay, cool," and then artists just say stuff.
I step away from those people. If they can't execute, I don't want them around me.
But it was just something that
They're vampires.
we were talking and that came up and I was like, okay, cool. And that was, I think, either September or October. And then in December, Steven was like, "Yo, I talked to Jeff about that thing we was talking about 2 months ago." We're gonna do that, and we're meeting up we're meeting up on Jeff's porch because it was winter, it was cold, but we didn't want to be inside. And so Jeff had a porch, and we hung out on his porch. And it was 6 months later, by the time I think we had the orders out. But y'all could highlight the details in between there. But that in my head, I was like, that's make a magazine. I don't have that kind of time. That's 10 years practice. I know how books work.
Yeah, Mark was flag-shipping that too. He was creating the files. Do you remember how long it took to pull? Because you were really maintaining those.
Yeah, and I think we gave people ultimately maybe something like maybe 12 weeks or something, in which we got all of the work collected with a few exceptions. And I think probably the longest portion of it was staging, getting proofs back, getting the order in. That was maybe the longest delay, but otherwise.
How long was that?
I can't remember, I'll be honest with you, but.
It was short because it
6 months. Yeah, 3 months old, maybe.
With a casual operation, it's taking care of itself because we're already independently doing other stuff. So I don't even remember. I was working on it just got done.
Right.
But as far as money, it's the 5 of us, we put up our own money, split it 5 ways. It's and then we ordered 300 copies and that was it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a relationship with Dirty Dungarees and Bottle Shop. I just wholesale books. And it's hard to get a hold of anyone else. I like the relationship. You get free farm eggs at Bottle Shop, some Skittles or Reese cups, get a cocktail and a comic. That's fantastic. They don't sell any other comic books there. I have a monopoly.
This made me build a
Thank you,
store for my
Bottle
website. I never cared for building an online store. My website was my undergrad website. That the undergrad website vibe, where it's just your name and an artist statement. And then you never even change the city that you live in. Having to update my website and put together a store became a part of this whole process. It just kind of
We have a question from the virtual audience.
Democratic Mossy, the money.
What advice would you give
Democratic,
to
we split.
artists that feel confined by the demands of capitalism in terms of time and energy?
Okay, so Stephen, we don't have time for you to answer that question.
That's true, that's true.
Oh, hold on. You guys might disagree. So it's kind of like what I was saying before. There's not really an excuse.
It's a good shirt.
You can make things, like you can make a comic with paper that you stole from your employer and a pen that you stole from the drugstore. And then when it comes time to make copies, like, I don't know, like, you know, if you don't have a friend at Kinko's that can steal the shit for you.
You don't have any friends.
I mean,
Friendless.
I don't know, just keep
Number one.
drawing, like
Friendless.
there really isn't any, and don't expect to make any money. Like, nobody's making money.
That's right.
Brian, nobody's making money off comics, right?
Right.
Johnny, who's making money off comics? But what I'm saying is, like, that's one of the great things about comics is you can do it and it's outside of all that shit. Like, you don't have to, like, you can do it for cheap. You can give it away and still build some sort of communication with people. Let people know, like, what's in your imagination, what's your world about, what do you have to say? And it's so cheap. And if you're trying to make money off of it, like,
Play the wrong game.
don't.
And let me just, to whoever's.
There's exceptions, but
To whoever's.
that shouldn't be, what I'm saying is it shouldn't be a goal.
Yeah. I have, for the last like 2-3 years, one of my closest friends is incarcerated. And he's been making comics this entire time. He's been published in Hyperallergic, and he continues to make comics. And whenever, you know, we can get paid, that's great. But also, like, it's not to, like, in terms of the confinement that one has to deal with and the structural and systemic problems, those are there. But working around them is always possible. And being able to send him a list of materials so that he can go and have somebody put together a mural, which is what he's doing right now. I just had to find like a list of muralist materials to send him. And then, you know, being able to have him send me scripts in the mail so I can edit the scripts and send it back to him. Having those relationships, having those, like, honestly, society is just people, and you have people that you care about, and there's nothing capitalistic about those relationships if you don't want them to.
Mhm.
And that is the society that you'll have to deal with making the comics. That's my response to that, I think, for today. That's how I respond to that.
And I think we'll have to wrap up because we're at about 10:02. So if everyone can join me in thanking our panel. And I'll leave you with the closing question just to think about on your way out, which came in from Gabby Metzler. How'd y'all get so hot? Thanks, guys.
Cheers.